Is the Hisense 75-inch U7 the TV you should be putting on the wall this year? Or is it a flashy piece of tech that will end up collecting dust in a corner? Who will actually get the most out of a 75-inch mini LED screen with a 165 Hz native refresh rate? And who would be better off spending their budget on something smaller? And, most importantly for the everyday buyer, does the price make sense when you compare it to what you'll see day-to-day in your living room? Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. When I first heard about the new 2025 Hisense U7, the buzz was all about the 3000 nit peak brightness and the promise of studio-grade gaming performance. Those numbers sound impressive, but the real question is whether they translate into a noticeable difference when you're watching a family movie, streaming a sitcom, or grinding a fast-paced shooter on your couch. I spent a weekend setting it up in a typical suburban living room large enough for a 75-inch panel, with a window that lets in afternoon light, a decent sound system, and a gaming PC that can push 4K at high frame rates. The experience gave me a solid base to talk about who will feel the upgrade and who might be better off looking elsewhere. Let's start with the people who will actually benefit. If you're a serious console or PC gamer, the native 165 Hz panel coupled with the Game Booster 288 is the kind of hardware that reduces motion blur and keeps frame rates steady, especially when you enable the variable refresh rate, VRR, that matches the output of the latest Xbox Series X or PlayStation 5. In my tests with a fast-moving racing title, the TV kept up with 144 frames per second without any stutter, and the motion handling felt smoother than most budget 120 Hz panels I've used. The enhanced game bar, which overlays performance stats without stealing too much screen real estate, is a small but handy touch for those who like to keep an eye on latency or frame rate while they play. Home theater fans also have a clear win here. The mini LED backlight, boasting up to 3,000 local dimming zones, actually delivers the contrast punch that older Edge LED TVs struggled with. When I threw a Dolby Vision HDR movie on, the brightest highlights, think sunlight streaming through a window, hit that 3000 nit mark without washing out, while the deep black stayed inky. Dolby Vision IQ and the Hiview AI Engine Pro work together to analyze the ambient light and tweak the picture on the fly, which means you don't have to spend a few minutes in the settings menu every time the sun goes down. The built-in Atmos support adds a sense of height to the soundtrack, making big-budget action sequences feel more immersive, especially when paired with a decent soundbar. Now, for the folks who just want a TV to watch news, YouTube videos, or the occasional Netflix binge, the picture is still strong, but the cost-to-benefit ratio shifts. The anti-reflection coating does a solid job of cutting down glare from the window, which is great for daytime viewing, but you'll notice that the panel's sheer size can dominate a smaller living space. If your couch is less than 8 feet away, you may find the 75-inch screen a bit overwhelming, and you'll have to sit further back to avoid eye strain. Also, while the U7 handles HDR well, the extra brightness isn't as noticeable in dimmer rooms where the content is already dark. You might not be leveraging the full 3000 nit capability in a typical evening setting. One hidden trade-off that shows up after the first few weeks is the TV's smart platform. Hisense bundles Google TV, which gives you a vast library of apps and decent voice search, but the interface can feel a tad sluggish when you jump between apps on a 75-inch display. I noticed a half-second delay when opening YouTube from the home screen, which isn't a deal-breaker, but can be annoying if you're used to the snap-fast experience of some competitors. The AI upscaling works well for most 1080p sources, but it occasionally introduces a slight halo around fine details in sports broadcasts, something you'll only notice if you're a sports fanatic watching fast action. Another practical consideration is the setup. The U7 comes with a fairly robust stand, but to get the full cinematic effect, you'll probably want to mount it on a wall. The weight of a 75-inch mini LED means you need a sturdy mount and a professional to install it safely, an extra cost that can add up. Once up, you'll need to run a high-speed HDMI 2.1 cable if you plan to use the full 4K at 120 FPS gaming potential. A standard cable will limit you to lower bandwidth, which defeats part of the point of the TV's high refresh panel. What about the price? In the current market, a 75-inch TV with this combination of mini LED backlight, high refresh rate, and full HDR suite sits in the upper mid-range tier. If you compare it to flagship OLEDs, The Hisense is cheaper while still delivering comparable brightness and decent black levels, thanks to the dense dimming zones. For gamers, the VRR